Hello and welcome to the 15-Minute Book Club. This is the show where Alex Churchill and I give an author 15 minutes to convince you to buy their book. And goodness, we have a cracker for you today. Alex, who's joining us?
We absolutely do, because I think it's rare that you say, like, someone is resurrecting a historical figure who has genuinely fallen by the wayside today. So without further ado, hello to our guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, hello, Alex, Matt. Hi. It's great to be on your show. My name is Marion Orr. I'm a political science professor at Brown University, and I'm the author of a new book.
This is really good. Go on, Matt, take it away.
Okay, we're gonna get cracking, but let's just give it its full title before we get going, Marion. What is the title of the book?
Yeah, the new book is called House of Diggs, and it's subtitled The Rise and Fall of America's Most Consequential Black Congressman, Charles C. Diggs, Jr. It was published by the University of North Carolina Press.
Right. I'm really excited to get into this. So let's see if I can actually work the timer. Actually, I might not want to, because this is going to be really interesting.
Really, we're just going to go on today.
So, Marion, your 15 minutes begins now.
Okay.
So if someone says to you, because I genuinely, when I look at the list of accomplishments, I'm stunned that I have not heard of this man before. So tell everyone, to begin with, why does Charles Diggs matter?
Well, Charles Diggs matters because he was, as I say in the subtitle of the book, one of the most consequential people to ever serve in the Congress. Diggs would rank high among all the some 12,000 people who have served in the House since the beginning. That would include people like George Santos, for example, who just left Congress a few weeks ago. Diggs was consequential in that he left a huge legacy, a tremendous tangible legacy. He, for example, was the founder of the Congressional Black Caucus. A lot of people, Alex and Matt, like to talk about the Congressional Black Caucus having 13 founding members, and that's the language that they typically use. Well, Diggs was one of the founding members, but I, in this book, lay out why you have to distinguish Diggs from the other 12. Diggs was, in fact, the person who brought them together, had the idea to form the caucus. So I argue that Diggs was, in fact, the founder of the Congressional Black Caucus, which today is the largest caucus in the House, some 62 members, very influential caucus of Black members of Congress. So he was the founder of the CBC. Hey, listen to this. Diggs was also the father of home rule for Washington, D.C. Home rule allows the residents of Washington, D.C. to elect its local public officials. Diggs in 1973 restored home rule to Washington, D.C. D.C. is a special, unique city in that it was created to be the seat of government. And because of that, Congress and to some extent the president has unique authority over the district. And one of the things that happened for many, many years is that the Congress did not allow the local people to elect its public officials. In 1973, changed that through the Home Rule Bill. And then the other reason why Diggs is so consequential is this. Diggs ignited, literally by himself, the American anti-apartheid movement. Many people connect the American anti-apartheid movement to the 1980s and 1990s. They don't realize or don't know that Diggs was talking about and mobilizing Congress around an anti-apartheid movement in the 1950s and 1960s. He was ahead of his times in terms of trying to change our relationship that is the U.S. relationship between the U.S. and the South African government. He was just a consequential, serious, policy-oriented legislator who sadly has been forgotten.
Where's he from? Whereabouts in the States did he come from? And what sort of lit this fire for public service in him?
Yeah, Diggs was a member of Congress from Michigan. He represented Detroit from 1955 to 1980. Diggs was born and raised in Detroit. In fact, Alex and Matt, Diggs was the son of the Great Migration. That's the big exodus of Black Americans from the South to the North and to the West. And Diggs' parents, both his father and mother, the Detroit in 1913 or so, and they would go on, the parents, to form a funeral home, and it became a very prosperous mortuary and funeral home in Detroit. In fact, the mortuary was called the House of Diggs, and that's why I have the title of the book, House of Diggs. Anyway, the House of Diggs funeral home was so successful that the family became very prominent, the father and mother and the son. He's the only child, Charles Diggs Jr., of his parents, Charles Sr. and Mamie Diggs. And so the father would parlay the success of the House of Diggs funeral home into electoral politics and become a member of the state legislature in Michigan, thus, setting an example of public service for his son. And Charles Diggs Jr. will eventually take his father's old state Senate seat in 1951, and in 1954 become a member of Congress. Diggs is the first Black member of Congress from Michigan. So he comes from a line of family members, especially his father, who was very, very influential in the public sector and the business world in Detroit and indeed in Michigan.
You've mentioned the span 55 to 80, which clearly burns right through the middle of the civil rights era. So let's get into some of his achievements. I wanted to ask you, because in our notes I've got, one of his first fights in Congress was against segregation in airport terminals. I did not know that extended to airport terminals as well. Why was that so important to him?
Well, it was important to him because it affected a growing segment of the American populace, that being middle class, upper class Black Americans who were beginning to use the airplane like other Americans to, go about their business and travel. And you see, Diggs came into office in 1955, and he understood what is called oversight authority. Congress has oversight authority over the federal government, over what the executive branch does. And it's supposed to oversee the executive branch to make certain that the executive branch are carrying out the intent of Congress. Anyway, Diggs understood this oversight authority, and when he came into office, he began to address this issue of segregation in the airport terminals. The airport terminals in the South in particular practiced Jim Crow, segregated lunch counters, segregated ticket counters, segregated restrooms based on race. And what Diggs did was he, using his oversight authority, discovered that the southern airports were violating federal regulations. There were these post-World War II provisions written into these grants that allowed that provided federal monies to the airports, and so the southern airports that were practicing Jim Crow was actually violating provisions already laid out in federal regulations. It's just that the federal regulators were not forcing the southern cities and states to provide by those. And so Diggs understood this, and he would begin to push federal regulators to provide by their anti-discrimination provisions. So, and that's what he did. And he was able to uh, uh, desegregate airport terminals before the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And you're right, most people think about transportation segregation, they think about buses, but the airports were also segregated, and Diggs used his oversight authority to push the regulators to do what they should have been doing in the first place. And so, and see, Diggs experienced this because as a businessman, his family business was quite prosperous. He flew, places, if you will. And he also knew the indignity that Black Americans who flew during this period faced. Dr. King, Sidney Poitier, all of these prominent Black people who flew in the 50s could not eat in an airport, and so this was something that Diggs knew he could address, and he did. And let me just say this to you. This affected average Black Americans in this way. Don't you know that average Black working class person was simply upset to hear that Dr. King, this great leader in our community, could not get a hamburger in the airport, or Benjamin Mays, the president of Morehouse College, a prominent Black man in the 1950s. He would come back and tell his people that he was treated this way on the airport. So while average working class Blacks did not fly on the airplane, they did not like their leaders being treated differently than the average white people.
We've got a couple minutes before we drop our silly internet question on you, but you got access to Diggs's FBI file. And I guess as a prominent civil rights campaigner, that was a pretty thick file.
Yes, it was. It was fascinating to get the file. I got it through the Freedom of Information Act, and it was quite revealing. It took me 5 years. Took 5 years really to get the file, and it revealed a lot. And one of the things it revealed, and I'm not going to tell your audience all that it reveals, but one of the things that it revealed was help close the circle on Diggs' indictment, conviction, and jail prison sentence. The FBI file allowed me to identify who the confidential informant was who called the Justice Department and told the Justice Department about the payroll kickback scheme that Diggs had been involved in. So yes, I got the file, the FBI file, and it's a very revealing file in that it helps, help us to better understand the downfall of Charles Diggs, and the book reveals the person who was the confidential informant who informed the government about Diggs' illegal activities, leading to Diggs' indictment, conviction, and 7 months in prison.
Which leads
You've
us
got a minute,
to
Alex.
Okay. Which leads us to the fact, this is a long career. There are highs, there are lows, and you've just mentioned the lows. So there was an indictment, there was a prison sentence, which leads us to, we went looking, and actually the reviews of the book are stellar. And so we did not find anyone saying, like, we didn't like the book, we didn't think this guy deserved it. But what we did hear tale of is a comment from someone that said, why would you go to all this trouble, Marion, to rehabilitate a crook? Why?
Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting question that person left. Listen, Diggs should not be known for the conviction and jail sentence. None of us want to be known for the worst thing that we ever did. And so it's not that I'm trying to resurrect a crook, if you will. What I'm really trying to do is reveal the work of a patriotic American who happened to have been an imperfect person who made a big mistake. Diggs was an American patriot who loved his country, and he should not be known for the conviction of these payroll kickback scheme. He should not be known only for that. He should be known for the wonderful contributions he made, not only in this country, but around the world.
Just to wrap up, as we have a few seconds left, when did we lose Diggs? When did he pass away?
Congressman Diggs died in August of 1998. He resigned from Congress in 1980, so he lived about nearly 20 years after serving in Congress.
So he was about, I'm doing the math here, about 75, 70.
Yes, he was 75 years old. Yes. And listen, the people who worked for Diggs all came out to his funeral. They had a funeral in Washington, D.C. and one in Detroit. And his colleagues just really talked and spoke well about his contributions. We had people there talking about his efforts in South Africa. People there talking of Marion Barry, who was the mayor of Washington, D.C.
Time's up!
Oh.
You see, it's a funny show, isn't it? You think you've got a bit of time, and then it all happens.
We've got some amazing stuff still to talk about for our Patreon Extra Time people, including Diggs's connection to the Emmett Till trial. And we also I'm going to ask you about Detroit, and I'm going to the Detroiters coming on the swearing in, and we're going to ask you about Africa as well. But for the people who aren't Patreon subscribers, Marion, thank you so much for joining us. If you are inspired to find out more about Mr. Diggs, there are links to buy the book in our affiliate links, and you can also drop us a review as well if you've liked this episode, so that more people come on and hear interviewees talking about their hard work.
Yes, and stick with us, because we've saved the good questions for Marion for this next bit. Thank you so much for joining us, Marion. Please stay with us, and to everybody else, thanks for joining us.